but we just have to stop a lot of aircraft to do that. But if I can get you on ILS 22 left, would that work?
And by saying that, air traffic control is essentially setting up a trap for this pilot. Now, if that pilot walks into that trap, he could easily be costing his airline over $1 million in repairs between melting the brakes and tires, and it's going to cause a lot of problems for the airport. Watch what happens.
Cathay 3298 Heavy, contact final 132.4.
132.4, Cathay 3298, thank you. Kennedy final, Cathay 3298. We have a flaps issue. Request a hold and we sort out the problem.
Cathay 3298 Heavy, no problem, sir. Fly heading 270.
Fly heading 270, we will advise you. Cathay 3298.
For those of you that aren't sure what he's talking about when he says they have a flap issue, these are the flaps. And on this particular plane, a 747-8, there are flaps in the front of the wing, and there are also flaps in the back of the wing. And they allow this plane to fly slower, which does make the plane less efficient, but it allows the plane to take off and land not going at, let's say, 300 knots. So these flaps are basically designed to make the plane less efficient by flying slower, but it will allow the plane to get off the ground and fly at a slower speed. That lets your plane take off slower, it lets your plane land slower, it lets your runways be a lot shorter because the planes don't have to get going as fast. There's all kinds of things. And then as the plane starts flying, those flaps retract into the wing, and when they retract into the wing, you get the benefit of a more efficient wing to go faster up higher in the air. So you're getting the best of both worlds. The ability to take off and land really slow with those flaps coming out and changing the overall shape of the wing. And then you get the ability to fly fast and efficient by pushing them back in the wing. And that's why you see those things moving at different speeds when you're taking off and when you're landing, and that's why they're coming out. Now you can also have a flap problem on a smaller plane, but like this plane right here, it only has flaps in the back of the wing. And it is a lot less impact if there is a problem with the flaps on this plane than on your typical commercial wide-body airline like we're talking about here. On commercial airliners, they have a design where there's redundancies, backup systems for everything. So let's say System A or Plan A to make the flaps go out doesn't work. Usually there's a Plan B to help you accomplish that same task. So they've looked through every possible scenario and they've come up with ways to have Plan A work, and if Plan A doesn't work, a Plan B. And so typically you'll never experience this as you're flying in your career. I've never had a flap issue like what they're talking about here. I've had some minor issues, but able to get it resolved. I've had an issue where the flaps wouldn't go in all the way, which is a bigger or less of a problem. For us, we had to go back to the airport because we couldn't fly across the ocean with that. But it's obviously less of a problem than if your flaps won't go out all the way and now you need to land, because landing a plane like this at this size and weight with no flaps is a real problem because the engineers have designed it so that way you're almost never going to have to deal with this. So now you know how vital flaps are. Watch what happens.
Cathay 3298.
Cathay 3298 here.
Yeah, we have an issue with our flaps, our leading edge flaps. The top and bottom is we've got quite a speed factor onto this. It looks like the only runway we're available to land on is 4 left for the landing distance.
Okay, right that, stand by.
Thanks, sir.
Cathay 3298 Heavy, tower advises that 13 right is actually longer than 4 left.
Yeah, I understand that. Our problem is that with the flaps, we aren't able to do the sort of Canarsie approach. There's no ILSs on that runway.
Cathay 3298 Heavy, turn left 040.
Left heading 040 degrees. Cathay 3298.
Cathay 3298 Heavy, I'm just making coordinations for the tower now to have that runway swept for you.
That's covered, thank you, sir. Yeah, our minimum speed is going to be over 190 knots, so it's a bit tight for Canarsie.
So you heard two different voices there coming from this Cathay plane. I'm assuming that this is the captain speaking to air traffic control specifically, just so instead of him telling the other pilot, hey, this is what I want you to say, he's just saying, I'll take the radios, you start working on the checklist. Now the captain is saying that he would like this runway right here, 4 left. But if you listen, the controller said 13 right is a longer runway.
Cathay 3298 Heavy, tower advises that 13 right is actually longer than 4 left.
So why would the pilot want 4 left instead, when you could see 13 right is actually quite a bit longer? The problem is that 4 left has a few different ways that you can get onto that runway, and 13 right only has one option. And that's this. This chart is what we use when we're coming into land. It's called an approach plate. And you can see here coming in, they're going to be at a 90 degree to the runway. And then what happens is in this section right here, typically pilots will have to disconnect and manually and visually fly the plane in. And it's going to be a very tight turn for a 747, especially when you're doing 190 knots, which is a lot faster than normal. To put it in perspective, a normal day, you'll be landing at, let's say, 130 to 155. Maybe that'd be the normal span that you'd be landing. So 190 is quite a bit more. Now, I have flown multiple times into 1-3 left on a 747 and a regional jet. I've been in there. And even with that one, it's the same thing. You fly in and you disconnect and you have to visually, and you can not disconnect. You can manually set some vertical speeds to do some things to help you out, but typically a lot of guys will disconnect and then you'll fly it in and around and land on 1-3 left. Now, one of the first landings I ever did as an airline pilot was on a 1-3 left doing that, and the captain said to me, "Oh, we're doing this approach. This will be fun." I said, "Oh, it's going to be fun for me?" And he goes, "No, it's going to be fun for me to watch you do this because it's not easy to do." And I was like, great, that's what I want my first day. So anyways, coming in on a 1-3 right, it's even tighter and you're dealing with a plane that's going a lot faster. So you're gonna have to make a much tighter turn. And I think what his concern is making that really tight turn, going faster than normal. What he might do is end up floating down the runway because it's easy to get high because you don't have a normal glide path that you would normally have, like when you would do on something like this with 4 left. So on 4 left, you're going to have this path that's going to show you exactly where you need to be, but on 1-3 right, it's going to be visual, so it's easy to get high. I have done it onto 1-3 left. I've gotten high, got corrected, and got down, but if you haven't done it many times, or you haven't done it in a long time, and now you're dealing with an emergency, you want to go with the safest course of action. And an ILS is something that every airline pilot is comfortable with. Straight in, no banks and turns, low to the ground, no having to plan out all these things. So his concern is if he comes in high and he's already going fast, if he doesn't land exactly where he wants to, all that additional runway is now wasted. Whereas if you're coming straight in on the ILS, you can really see everything. You can even go a little bit below that path indicator that's in your plane, as long as you're keeping visual sight of everything to make sure you land exactly where you need to give yourself as much runway as possible. That's harder to do on something like that, especially if you haven't done it for a while. Watch what happens.
Okay, and then I can also offer you 2-2 left if that's what you want to do, but if you need 4 left, we could probably accommodate that as well. I just got to work on a few things.
Appreciate that, sir. I think 4 left is really our only option.
Okay. Cathay 3298 Heavy, we're going to declare an emergency then. Is that understood?
It is our only option really to land. I'm going to say we're under control. It's just with the factors for the flap situation. Our minimum speed is over 190 knots, so it only really leaves a ILS straight in approach, and we need to runway left side.
Cathay 3298 Heavy, if I can get you ILS to 2-2 left, would that work? Or I'm just trying to figure out what my options are here because we got opposite direction landing. If you need 4 left, it's absolutely not a problem. But we just have to stop a lot of aircraft to do that. But if I can get you on ILS 2-2 left, would that work?
Just stand by one. We'll run the figures one more time. Thanks.
All right, thanks.
Okay, so there's the trap. He's saying, hey, we can get you this runway, but it's going to cause us a lot of problems. We're going to have to shut down a bunch of traffic. And most pilots tend to not want to be a problem and inconvenience everybody. They're going to go, well, I don't want to mess you up and mess everybody up. And so what happens is they set up this trap. And I'm not saying that the controller was intending for it to be a trap, but he set up this trap where if the pilot were to walk into it, he's going to create himself a lot of problems. Sometimes what you'll have if you're a pilot is somebody will give you a suggestion and you have to think through all the scenarios there. There was a instance where there was a plane that had hot brakes, and that plane had hot brakes, and the fire team showed up to the plane and they said, hey, your brakes are really hot. They look like they're maybe even going to start smoking. Do you want us to use our fire extinguisher hose thing and cool the brakes down? And so they walk this pilot into the trap, and the pilot goes, oh yeah, sure, cool, do that. By doing that, it rapidly cooled down these brakes, causing them to shatter. Now, me knowing this, when I went for my a check ride a year or so ago, they did that exact same scenario. We came in, we had hot brakes, and the examiner was there, was playing, he basically plays all the different parts, but in that scenario, he's playing now the fire chief, and he goes, hey, Boeing 123, your plane's on the runway, we see it has hot brakes. Do you want us to cool them down? And I was like, negative, don't do that. Because I knew for what happened from the prior incident of those brakes getting cooled too fast. If you leave them alone, they will cool down because they're designed to get really, really hot. They'll cool down on their own. So that's a trap. That fire chief wasn't intending to set those pilots up, just like this controller isn't intending to set these pilots up. But if they don't think it through, they can walk into this trap and get themselves in a lot of trouble. So here's the problem. This is runway 22 left, and the total runway length is only 8,400 feet. Now, on a 747-8, could you land on 8,400 feet? Absolutely, you could do that. Under normal conditions, you could do that. And at 190 knots, if you really, really had to, you could also still do that. I'm talking planes on fire, only runway nearby. Could you do that? Probably. I don't know what their overall weight is, so it's hard to say what their brake setting is going to be and what type of brake temps they're going to get when they land. There's too many factors in there for me to know. But you can land on something that short. However, on a 747-8, when you land, the brakes do heat up a lot, and on a short runway in the middle of summer, if you are heavy, you will heat those brakes up so much that they will melt all of your tires. When you start melting all the brakes and tires on a Dash 8, you're looking at millions of dollars. Now, in fairness, this controller did say it's not a problem.
If you need 4 left, it's absolutely not a problem.
And I'm glad he did that, because what that does is it lets the pilot feel okay to say, no, we definitely need to take this runway 4 left. He did set up the trap, but he also gave him that, hey, it's not a problem. If there's going to be any issues at all, it's not a problem. So I'm really glad that the controller gave him that out, even though he was saying, it would be better for me if you could do this, but we can give you that if you need it. That's really important phrasing to make that pilot feel okay to say, hey, no, we need to take the safest course of action. And then they declare an emergency for the pilots. Now, had those pilots said, hey, pan, we need this runway, then it would have been a different scenario. But they were just saying, hey, we want this runway. But now they're going to have to start shutting things down and rearranging everything for these guys to come in. And that's going to require them declaring an emergency. It can't just be like, hey, I'd like this runway. And they just go, oh, we'll just stop it all for you, Cathay, or whoever. So, but by declaring the emergency, that makes it so, okay, all the normal rules of how things are supposed to work are off. Now all the priority goes to him. And so we'll declare the emergency and you'll get that runway. That's why that happened. A lot of times the controllers don't want to declare an emergency and pilots don't want to declare an emergency because there's a lot of paperwork involved. But all of that is better than this plane going off the end of the runway and here into the bay.
Cathay 3298 Heavy, when you get a chance, we'll need the fuel remaining in pounds and the people on board also.
Sure, come
Cathay 3298 Heavy, turn left, heading 270.
Left heading 270 degrees.
Cathay 3298 Heavy, how we looking?
Cathay 3298, we got 38,800 pounds of fuel, and we have 3 on board.
38,000, say that again, sir?
38,800 pounds.
How many souls?
3.
Roger. Cathay 3298 Heavy, turn left 150.
Left heading 150, Cathay 3298.
Cathay 3298 Heavy, are we still looking at 4 left here, or you think 22 left is a possibility?
Sorry, sir, we've run the figures. Yeah, it's got to be 4 left for us. Otherwise, the tyres are in the melt zone. So 4 left is our only option.
Okay, roger that, sir. I'm going to get you in right here. And do you need any more delay or anything like that to get ready, or are you guys good to go?
No, we're just called up, so we're all good to go now. Thank you for your help.
Okay.
That actually surprised me. For some reason, I thought this was a normal passenger plane, but it's actually a freighter. And you can know it's a freighter because what he says right here.
Cathay 3298, we got 38,800 pounds of fuel, and we have 3 on board.
They have 38,000 pounds of fuel on board, which is 90 minutes to 2 hours worth of fuel, which in an emergency, you want to have extra fuel. It's actually more than a lot of planes will have when they're getting ready to land, and you always want to have extra fuel for this type of situation. The only time you don't want extra fuel on your plane is if you're on fire, but since they're not on fire, the extra fuel is great. You got time to work out problems, time to hold, time to call the company and see if they have any great ideas. So you have time to do all of that stuff. And so that's a lot of fuel to have. So they're not in any type of a fuel emergency, which is great. Now you notice that the pilot switched again who was talking. My guess is the captain started to work the radios while the other pilots were working on this. This is commonly referred to as a QRH, and basically it is all the manuals that are written from the engineers of how to solve different problems like your flaps won't go out. So it sounds like the captain probably said, okay, you guys run these checklists. I'm going to run the radios and fly the plane. And different captains will do it differently. Sometimes it's the reverse. They want to do the checklist and they want the other pilots to fly the plane. It's all up to them. It all depends on the circumstances. So that's why these voices keep switching. Now you might think, man, all this switching back and forth must be kind of crazy for the pilots up there. But it's not. It's something that we've been doing since the beginning of being an airline pilot. That situation of that switch back and forth is really normal. So we all know exactly, hey, now I'm doing this role, now I'm doing that role, and all of what's required of you when you're doing that role. So it's really not a big deal. Now, in case you didn't catch it, listen to what he says here where he's worried about the tires melting.
Sorry, sir, we've run the figures. Yeah, it's got to be 4 left for us, otherwise the tires are in the melt zone. So 4 left is our only option.
That's what I was talking about earlier. When you come in and you have to brake really hard, those brakes can heat up so much that it causes the tires to melt, and they do that on purpose so the tires don't explode. You don't want to have your tires heat up so much and now they explode. That's a bigger problem. So they have these plugs that will actually push out and it will push in there and it'll make the tires deflate. So, but now you need new tires because those tires are gone and probably new brakes. So if he had taken that 2-2 left, and again, I'm not sure because I don't have their performance numbers, but my guess is at that speed, at that weight, their concern was we're going to heat up the brakes, they're going to melt the tires, and now we're going to have a real problem. I saw on the internet some people were talking about this, and they were saying, oh, they're going to land so fast that the tires are going to melt. And while brakes do have a max speed, I've landed at 170, 175 knots because we were really heavy with gusty winds and things like that, and that's fast. I think more what their concern is, I'm guessing, is that they're going to land on a really short runway, heat up the brakes. By heating up the brakes, they're going to worry about that melting the tires. Because if they can land on 2-2, or they can land on, if they thought that the speed of landing was going to create that, then that would be a problem on 4. So either way, if they're going to be landing at the same speed, but if you're using your brakes, that's going to melt your tires. That's why I think that that's happening. So people are saying, oh, they're going to land so fast, they're going to melt. Well, I mean, you can blow out your tires if you land too fast, but I think that's the brake that's their concern.
Have a 3298 heavy, ILS 4 left, the frequency is 110.9er.
Copy that, ILS 04 left, 110.9, Cathay 3290.
Cathay 3298 heavy, speed 200 or less, your discretion, 200 I guess it works.
Speed 200 knots, Cathay 3290.
Cathay 3298 heavy, turn left, heading 010.
Left heading 010, Cathay 3298.
Cathay 3298 heavy, roll out heading 090. Cathay 3298 heavy, you can fly heading 010, intercept 4 left localizer.
Heading 010 and intercept the 04 left localizer, Cathay 3298.
Cathay 3298 heavy, fly heading 360 and cross localizer for space.
Roger, heading 360 cross localizer, Cathay 3290.
Cathay 3298 heavy, turn left, tree 0, and are you pretty much at your slowest practical speed?
Heading 330, A5 20 knots minimum for now, Cathay 3290.
Okay, roger. Cathay 3298 heavy, make sure you have enough room here. So make a left turn all the way around, left turn heading 060 on a heavy, intercept the local.
Now, even though it's not necessary for the controller to say this, he says it in order to help these pilots.
Cathay 3298 heavy, ILS 4 left, the frequency is 110.9er.
And that shows me just how much he's wanting to be on these pilots' team to help them safely get what they want to get done. Now, you'll notice that there's all these vectoring that is happening where he's giving all these different headings. He's trying to help these guys, but the problem is that there's other planes that are coming in, and so he needs to get them out of the way because they're flying so fast, and that isn't a normal speed that you'll see pilots flying when they're getting ready to land. They'll normally say, okay, slow down to your slowest practical if they need to slow you down, and you might be doing like I said, 150 knots. Okay, cool. Now that's a normal number. 190 knots, that might be going a lot faster, plus the winds can be pushing you faster, so it's going faster than what that controller can realistically line up and get everything done. And so that, I think, is why he's giving these delaying vectors. And he's doing the right thing, because if he were to shove him in there and go, it should work out okay, now he could have these guys do a go around, and now it just creates all kinds of mess. So it'd be better to just do a 360 in the sky and just come back in, even though it's kind of annoying to you because you just want to get down on the ground. He's doing what he feels is best, and what you would want as a pilot, you would want your air traffic controller to do that hey, just give me enough space, just let me come in and land. I don't want to have to be looking at another plane coming in and thinking, oh great, now we have a potential go-around situation. Now what he's saying when he's talking about flying through the localizer is this.
Cathay 3298 Heavy, fly heading 360 and cross localizer for space.
Normally a plane as they come in, as they cross this line, would then line up with the runway. That's called your localizer. But instead, since he miscalculated the speed, he's going to have them fly out here and come out through that localizer and come back and intercept it again a little bit later. By letting the pilots know, hey, this is what I'm going to have you do, it makes it a lot easier for them because there's stuff that we need to program in the plane. So he's saying, I'm going to push you through this. So now the pilots aren't wondering, hey, we need to turn if we're going to turn in on this localizer. They're not wondering that. By the controller telling him, hey, I'm going to push you through this localizer and bring you back around, the pilots know what they need to arm and disarm on the flight deck so that way they cannot intercept that localizer and turn in and all these other things. So the controller's doing the right thing by keeping them in the loop of what's going on. Sometimes the controller will have an idea like, oh, I'm going to just push them through the localizer, but they don't tell the pilots that. So the pilots are like, hey, we're going to blow through this localizer here. So what this controller is doing just shows that he is thinking ahead and letting the pilots know, hey, this is what I'm doing, which brings everybody to work together as a team. And if you remember earlier from this call,
Cathay 3298, we got 38,800 pounds of fuel.
they have plenty of fuel, so they're not in any rush at all.
Cathay 3298 Heavy on that 060 heading, intercept 4 left localizer.
On the heading 060, intercept 4 left localizer, Cathay 3298.
Cathay 3298 Heavy, descend maintain 2000.
Descend maintain 2000, Cathay 3298.
Cathay 3298 Heavy, you're 19 miles from Crystal. Descend and maintain 2000 till established localizer. Clear dollars from a 4 left approach.
Descend 2000 to accept localizer, clear area 4 left approach, Cathay 3298.
Cathay 3298 Heavy, contact Kennedy Tower 119.1.
119.1, Cathay 3298, thank you. Kennedy Tower, Cathay 3298, as established localizer on 4 left.
Cathay 3298 Heavy, Kennedy Tower, wind 120 at 13, gust 19, equipment standing by, runway 4 left, clear to land.
4 left, clear to land, Cathay 3298.
Well, this is interesting. The winds are 120 and gusting 19 knots. That means them landing on runway 4, the winds are coming from this direction, essentially a direct crosswind. That also means that if they had taken 13 right, they would have had the wind almost directly on their nose, essentially making the plane go across the ground 10 to 20 knots slower. Now the pilots would have known about this wind before they said what runway they needed. So he's saying, hey, I'd rather take a 20-knot direct crosswind, which is not really a big deal, than have this approach come in where I possibly get high, even though it's direct off the nose and they're going to be going 10 to 20 knots slower across the ground. So if he was really concerned about his tires exploding because of the tire speed, he would have said, okay, look, I'll take this one. If I don't get it right the first time, I got plenty of gas. I'll come back around and do it again. Not a big deal if they were really concerned about the touchdown speed on the tires. But I think really what his concern more is the braking and wanting to just be established and not be getting up possibly too high and coming in too tight. So he's making this judgment call, which from the pilot's perspective, it's really their call. Assuming that everything works out great, the airline doesn't care. Something works out wrong, they go, why did you do that? You could have had this thing and gone 20 knots slower, right? So that's the risk of being a pilot. Sometimes you have to make a decision based off of what you think is the safest call, and then you have 20 other people who weren't there and from the comfort of their office or their hotel room to make judgments about what they thought they would do in this situation. So it's his call, and I think, hey, this is what I feel safer with. That's the right thing. Now, you probably caught where they said this about the equipment standing by.
Equipment standing by, runway 4 left, clear to land.
Once air traffic control declares the emergency, what that means is they're going to roll the fire trucks no matter what. So if you're ever on a plane and you have a malfunction of any kind, it might be the pilots that declare the emergency. It might be air traffic control that does it. Either way, those firemen are going to get loaded up in their uniforms, in their trucks, ready to go. And they're going to get out there next to the runway. So you will see them when you're coming in. That doesn't mean you're about to die. It's just an automatic. It's not like, hey, no, we don't need the trucks. No, they're going anyway. No matter what you say, they are going to be there. So it's just a mandatory thing. Now, you would rather have them there in case something does go wrong, right? You'd rather have them suited up, ready to go with their trucks. And they got all these cool cannons that shoot water. And I've asked multiple times from firefighters at the airport Fire and Rescue, if I can shoot the water cannon, but they won't let me. I'm guessing there's some legal liability to letting a little boy play with $1 million truck. I don't know. That's probably it. But I've never been able to do it, but it looks really cool and they shoot water really far. So it looks fun. Anyway, I'd rather have them there than not have them there. So if you ever see them there, just realize that it's just a mandatory thing. They're there for your safety.
3298 Heavy, there's traffic at your 3 o'clock and 1.5 mile at 500 feet west on a low level helicopter.
Okay, sure. Traffic, Cathay 3298.
Cathay 3298 Heavy, continue and advise if you need any further assistance.
Cathay 3298, negative assistance.
Cathay 3298 Heavy, if able, you can turn left.
Okay, we will take Echo, Cathay 3298.
Now they made it on the ground, and it was a little bit unclear in the background noise from this controller while she was talking to them, but it sounded like there was maybe a cheer or a clap. I don't know. Maybe that's just me imagining and wanting that to be the case. But listen to this.
Cathay 3298 Heavy, if able, you can turn left.
So even though air traffic control, I think, was really doing a great job, they did set up that trap, which again, I don't think was an intentional thing to set them up. He was just thinking, hey, this would be way more convenient for me and for everybody. I don't have to fill out this paperwork if you would just take this runway. But the pilot really made the right call here by saying, hey, no, we're not going to do that. And that's one of the things about being a pilot, that you have to know when you need to hold your ground. No, that's not acceptable. I need this. I'm unable to take that runway. And that's why in that Sully movie, it was famous with the unable. Basically, you have to know what your limits are for your skills and your ability. The pilot said, I don't want to take that tight banking turn to get in there. I don't feel comfortable with that. I'd rather come straight in and I can use as much of that runway as I can and I'm more comfortable with it. That's the right call by them. Air traffic control is doing a great job doing all the vectoring, letting them know what's going on. And even though he, again, set that trap up, he's really doing everything to get them into a safe spot to get them landed and on the ground, declares the emergency, shuts down the airport to let them land. So this is really a great example of teamwork and working everything as it should be when everybody's working together as a team. That's what you want to see. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.